first, we do want to acknowledge this day. This day, September 11th, is a hard one for many of our fellow Americans. I feel like it's still a hard one in many ways for yours truly, too. I mean, it doesn't seem like it's been 22 years. Does it? 22 years? I was just listening to our pal Emily Jashinsky over at The Federalist, and she was interviewing a bunch of Federalist employees who were two when 9/11 happened. I mean, they have no memory of it, right? There's a whole generation that's out there doing great things that has no active memory of it. But the feelings really are so raw for many. 22 years have come and gone since the unfathomable attack on America. It took the lives of nearly 3,000 people, and the iconic skyline of New York City changed forever. And so did our national identity. So did part of our soul. When terrorists flew passenger planes into the World Trade Center and the Pentagon, and one plane that ended up in a field in Pennsylvania, thanks to the brave passengers on board. Days later, then President George W. Bush stood atop the rubble at Ground Zero and delivered this iconic moment.
This nation stands with the good people of New York City and New Jersey and Connecticut as we mourn the loss of thousands of our citizens. I can hear you. I can hear you. The rest of the world hears you. And the people who knocked these buildings down will hear all of us soon.
That moment is one of the reasons so many of us who took that in live at the time will always have a soft spot in our hearts for President Bush. Notwithstanding the foreign policy debacles that followed, he brought us together at a time when we were ripped right down to our fabric apart. It didn't matter if you were a Republican, a Democrat, an independent. What mattered back then, we were all Americans. We loved each other. We loved our flag. Our political differences were secondary. The weeks that followed showed the world the best of us, from the first responders who rushed into the danger to the everyday Americans who gave their time and money to help the victims. Just weeks after that terrible day, then President Bush came back to New York City and threw out the first pitch at Yankee Stadium. We wanted to show you the whole thing because it's a moment that could not happen today. That's how it feels. Just feels like this couldn't happen today, given our divided politics.
For tonight's ceremonial first pitch, and please welcome the President of the United States. Mr. President.
And the crowd went wild. He aced the pitch, coming from the baseball family, and the chants of USA, USA, USA. I remember my husband, Doug, who lost a very good friend on 9/11, had registered for the New York City Marathon that year. I don't remember. I met him after, but he tells the story of how he had registered with a bunch of those guys to run the New York City Marathon. And it's a lottery system. You know, you may or may not get in. And it was, I think he said 9 days before the marathon. And he got a notice saying he had been accepted. He was the only one amongst their circle of guys who were all grieving the loss of their friend. So he did it. He put on his sneakers. He wasn't really a runner even, but he decided if he could run 8 miles that day that he would do the 26-mile marathon. And he completed it with bloody feet by the end. because the people were so inspirational around New York City that day. They held the marathon, notwithstanding 9/11. And the people with their USA signs and their flags cheered on the runners at every turn. They were singing patriotic songs and they were cheering on just a moment in which New York proved our spirits had not been broken. I had just left New York right before 9/11. I'd been living here for years as a lawyer and had moved to Chicago when the actual attack happened. But my license still read 71 Broadway, where I had lived until a couple months beforehand. One of the planes that hit the Trade Center lost its engine on top of that building that I lived in. And I used to go to the World Trade Center all the time just to read the paper, to get my coffee, to go to the Barnes & Noble there, to go out for a drink on the windows of the world at the top with friends and go dancing sometimes. And so it's personal for anybody who lived in and around New York. It's personal for most Americans. It's one of the reasons we don't like seeing politicians or anyone else make light of that day or use it for politics in any way. And its sobriety, its importance is one of the reasons why we don't particularly love it when our president doesn't bother to show up at one of the memorial sites, as is happening with President Biden today. He's going to be in Alaska instead. This is a day on which we remember those who were lost on that terrible, terrible day 22 years ago, and we reflect on the fact that it's not over. Since 9/11, another 331 FDNY members have succumbed to post-9/11 illnesses. In fact, the greater numbers are much, much higher than that. Most of the families would put it into the thousands. They now say that more have died from cancers caused by working in and around Ground Zero than were killed on the actual day. I mean, it's just absolutely chilling, not to mention those who gave their lives fighting for the country in Afghanistan and Iraq. We also reflect on this day of what it means to be an American. What does it mean to be an American? The rights that we stand for, the way this country was crafted, the thing that made the terrorists hate us so much, much of which is enshrined in the U.S. Constitution, including the Bill of Rights, and declared, of course, in the Declaration of Independence, which preceded it. Those rights, our inalienable rights as human beings, are important. They remain important, and they remain what makes America special. We have rights written down and recognized that go unrecognized in most parts of the world. Most parts of the world. You look at what happens with free speech up in Canada, where Jordan Peterson is undergoing a mandated re-education course because he made some true comments about biological sex. You look at what's happening over in the UK even on free speech. They don't have what we have. What we have is important. It's worth protecting, and it drives other people to hate. It doesn't mean it's not worth standing for. It certainly means it's worth fighting for. And those of us who are alive on 9/11, and I hope to believe even the next generation, will never forget why we were attacked that day and the unity we felt as Americans once we were. I always wanted to grow my own vegetable garden, and now I have a Lomi, and it's changed the way I think about food waste. Lomi transforms my garbage into gold at the press of a button. It's fun. Lomi is a countertop electric composter that turns food scraps into dirt in under 4 hours. Now I'm loving the composting. Plus, it's made cooking at home even more fun. Well, it's made it fun, period. It wasn't fun. Now it's a little fun. There's no food rotting in the garbage, smelling up the kitchen. Thanks to Lomi, you have to take out the trash far less frequently. You can turn your waste into nutrient-rich dirt that you can then feed to your plants, your lawn, or your garden. All your food scraps, your plant clippings, even those leftovers in the back of the fridge can go boom into the garden, helping grow more nutritious food right in your own backyard. Whether you want to stay making a positive environmental impact or you just want to grow a beautiful garden, Lomi is perfect. Head to lomi.com/MK, LOMI.com/MK. Use the promo code MK to get $50 off your order. That's $50 off when you head to LOMI.com/MK. Use the promo code MK at checkout for your discount. Turn your food waste into dirt with the press of a button, thanks to Lomi. Use the code MK to save $50. Lomi.com/MK. Hey, thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.